This week, I had the absolute pleasure of sitting down and having a conversation with Paul Iskoff, founder of Further, which connects locally sourced native food with marquee eating experiences in some of the most remote and unique locations across Western Australia. Paul told me how he started his chefing journey by taking a job in a restaurant in Busselton just to support his surfing, and how that led him on a journey around the world to some of the most prestigious restaurants in the world, before coming back to Western Australia to start Further. Paul provides a fascinating insight into how he selects the food and the locations for the Further events, as well as the scale of the logistics and the thinking that goes on behind these incredible events, and how they connected to the land and the traditional owners of those lands. What strikes me is how Paul brings his experience of working in these cultures of excellence and focus from the different kitchens from around the world he's worked in, to create and deliver these amazing gastronomic experiences that set on the beautiful and varied landscape here in Western Australia. So enjoy, Paul. Hello and welcome back to WA Real. I'm your host, Bryn Edwards. Connecting locally sourced native produce with marquee events in some of the most unique locations across Western Australia is the focus of today's conversation with Paul Iskoff, founder and owner of Further. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Paul, you grew up in Western Australia. One of the questions I always ask all of my guests, because it's WA Real, is tell me about what it meant to you to grow up in Western Australia. How has that shaped you? Are you a proud Western Aussie?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
I love Western Australia. Grew up in Perth, in the city, but from a very young age, mum and dad would bring us down to the southwest and the Great Southern for holidays. So I'm a city kid, but I'd prefer to be out in the country and down this way.
Yeah, we're down here at your house in Busselton here.
Yeah.
So what are some of your fondest memories of being in WA? Is it outdoors and things like that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we had, some great family friends who lived further south than us, and we'd come down for weekends, holidays, and spend a lot of time at the beach. So, for me, whether it's down on the coast or out in the bush, it just used to, make me happy. I used to run around a lot, and from a young age started surfing as well. So, yeah. We spent a lot of time on the coast.
Where does the name Iskoff come from?
So, a lot of people think it's Russian, but it's actually from Denmark.
Right.
So there's a place called Iskol, which is just north of the German border in Denmark. And, you look at it and it says, if you pronounce it how it's spelled, Iskov, but we say Isko, and then when I was in Denmark, they some of the local guys were like, "Oh, Iskol," and it's an actual place.
Right.
So, came from the Vikings apparently.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a big focus on food, preparing food, cooking, which is been your career. Where does that come from in Paul's story?
So, I didn't really start cooking until I was about 19 or 20.
Right.
Even before that, I didn't cook much at home. So I'd tell people that, I was at 19 years old and I still couldn't cook rice.
Right.
The reason I got into cooking was at the time I'd finished school. I'd done a year at TAFE, so engineering production, and that was a Cert 3. So I did a year and went into an apprenticeship down in Yallinga. We sort of ran out of some work, and I ended up living on a farm at the shearing shed, and spent some time doing that. And the people that I was living with were fantastic. They were always trying to support me and help me out. And they came home one day and said, "Look, there's a job down here in Dunsborough. You get to work from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight, so you can go surfing all day long." And I went, "Wow, this sounds great." And they're like, "It's in a restaurant." I was like, "Okay, that sounds fantastic." Wasn't really interested in the cooking. I was just interested in the surfing side of things. So I started apprenticeshiping, cooking, and that's sort of where it came from.
Right, so there was no early role models of cooking or food experiences that made you go, oh, this is what I want to do?
No, not really. I sort of just fell into it.
Fell into it by accident.
And, I did a few months in Dunsborough, but I, had been spending a lot of time down on the south coast in Albany for many years. So I just decided, look, I'm going to move to Albany and continued the apprenticeship and worked at a great place, but it was very, I guess, basic food, done really well. And same thing, just got to surf all day and cook at night time.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you start to really resonate with it or enjoy it?
Yeah, so I think that, I loved going to work. I loved the people I was working with, and I enjoyed the challenge of it, but I wasn't passionate about the food or in love with the food or super interested. That probably came 4 or 5 years later. And over that time I sort of worked in a few different restaurants, and each one it'd go to a better restaurant and, learn new things. And then it must have been, would have been 25 or 24, 25, where I went, I was working at Restaurant Amiz in Perth, and that's when I went, hang on a second, this is really interesting, it's very different. And that's where I fell in.
What was it that really captured your interest and imagination?
Well, I think I went in for a trial. They'd only been open for a few months, and I went in for a trial just before Christmas, and there was this one dish. It was roasted watermelon, like on a char grill, prawns and popcorn, and the popcorn had like chorizo and parsley, and it was this really interesting dish, really beautiful. And at that point I was like, I want to work here, and everything just seems so interesting. So within a few months after I started, I just went, this is incredible, like I just want to learn as much as I can. And,
right. And is that what took you forward on your journey to some of the world's most prestigious restaurants?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, before that I was working, maybe 8 or 9 hours a day. Went in there and we were doing huge hours, but it was just going past so quickly. And I was just excited to get to work every day, and I'd get home from work and I'd do research and read books and, see what else is out there. And from there it sort of just carried on.
Now, as I said, you've worked in a number of the most prestigious restaurants in the world. One of the things that I personally always find interesting about chefs and some of these kitchens is the pursuit of excellence and the extremely high standards of which they hold themselves accountable to. What's that like, being in one of those kitchens?
It can be pretty high stress, you could say. There's some chefs out there that are total assholes, and that can really, make life difficult for people and almost make it unenjoyable. I've been really lucky and worked with great chefs, great people. But, yeah, you get to a point where, it's almost like OCD sets in and everything needs to be perfect, and every plate that goes out needs to be absolutely spot on. Like, these people coming to eat, the guests, they're paying good money, they want that experience, and you want to make sure that, everybody gets the perfect dish coming out. So it is, quite stressful at times, but...
Did you enjoy the stress?
Yeah, I think that, a lot of the places that I went to, there wasn't all that much stress. You're working with a group of people that are that they have the same mindset. They're really passionate. They work hard, and when you get that team and everyone's bouncing off each other, it's more about just getting stuff done, like, working hard and quick and fast, and you don't have that stress so much. It's obviously there, but it just helps you get through the day and put out a really beautiful plate of food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you learn a lot about yourself during that part?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, especially as you work your way through all the stages of a kitchen, starting, maybe
Just
doing
talk us through those stages, just for somebody who doesn't know.
Yeah, so I mean, you walk into a kitchen and there's all these different sections, depending on how big the restaurant is. But you might have a cold larder area where there's entrees served from, or salads and stuff, and then the hot pass where you're doing all the cooking, pastry where you're making breads and desserts, and then maybe the pass where you're calling the dockets and plating the food and stuff like that. So I think that it's really important to be able to learn all aspects of the kitchen, and then eventually actually learn all aspects of how to run a business, which I only started learning 6 or 7 years ago.
Yes.
Once you learn that, you realise how hard your bosses actually work, and at the time when you're in the kitchen, you're questioning, why are they in the office so much? It's not until you actually are running your own business, doing all that work behind the scenes, that you go, wow, okay, cooking's the easy part. Yeah. Getting organised, doing service, that's the easy part, the fun part. So, yeah, I think it's important to, have an understanding of the whole business, not just each section in a kitchen and running it, but the overall. It makes you appreciate spending time in the kitchen and doing the cooking even more.
Yeah. Did you appreciate your time in the kitchen while you were in some of these world-class restaurants?
Yeah, certainly. I mean,
did you ever stand there and think, shit, look where I'm at?
Yeah. So.
And this started with just, I'll go down here and work in Brussels.
Yeah. So in 2012, I did a round the world trip for 12 months, and I finished up at a musée and just decided I'm going to go stage, which is working for free or work experience at restaurants.
Yeah.
So, I'd done a bit of staging in Australia on the East Coast at some of the restaurants there. So restaurants like Mark, Bacchus, Key, Tetsuya. So they had good names. So when I applied for stages overseas, they saw the places that I've been before, and that sort of got my foot in the door. And I was really lucky to get into some incredible restaurants, and just learned so much. And each of them I could take away certain lessons that I've sort of picked up from each restaurant and each country that they were in.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, I came back extremely broke and came back to nothing, but the experience was I'll never get a chance to do that again, I don't think.
So where did the idea for Fervour, and for somebody who doesn't know, can you just talk us through what it is? Yeah,
so when I came back from that around the world trip, I was really inspired, and I wanted to focus on native Australian ingredients, and I thought, well, let's do a pop-up and give it a go, and we'll see how we like it, we'll see how the guests respond to it. And we gave it a crack, and we did our first dinner down in Margaret River Permaculture in an outdoor barn. And we were very unorganised. It was, it was really tough. But we had, I think it was about 26 people, and a lot of them were the chefs from down here and industry people and friends. And it just went really well, and people responded really well to it. And we, even though the pack down took a ridiculous amount of time, hours and into the next day, we just enjoyed it so much. So we decided to try a few more pop-ups, and we do them in different locations. So it continued on from there, and by doing a pop-up in a different region, it allows us to see a different location, meet different people, and use different ingredients. So we were constantly learning. We still are. We're constantly learning every place we go to.
Mm.
So instead of having a permanent restaurant, by doing these pop-ups, we just get to travel, meet people, and learn as we go. And that's
where did the idea for it though come? You know, just I'm going to focus on the native ingredients. Was that influence from like your time at Noma, or?
I guess a bit. We were using native ingredients, for quite a few years before I did my trip, but only small amounts. Maybe some lemon myrtle here and wattle seed there, and it probably was while I was travelling. Noma and definitely Dom in Brazil, just using ingredients from their region, a lot of ingredients that I hadn't heard of before and a lot of people hadn't seen. So over that year I was thinking, well, how many ingredients do we have back at home? So this whole year I was just studying as much as I could and trying to find out what we have in our backyard here in Australia. There wasn't heaps of information, but...
There's not, is there?
No.
You know, because the default is to go to Coles and Woolies and buy the fresh veg that we all know and love.
Yeah.
But is very European and on offer.
Exactly. And, you know, that's all great as well. But, you know, for me, it was... I was curious why we're not using more of these ingredients in our own backyard. And why do people in Europe eat more kangaroo than we do here in Australia? Like, it's such a delicious meat. It's so healthy for us. It's so sustainable. It's free range. We don't have to give it water. We don't have to give it food. It's good for the land. So I was asking myself all these questions, and it would have been while we're over there that I talked with my sister and said, you know, when we get back, we're doing a pop-up. We're going to give it a go.
Got all these ideas, I've got all this knowledge and experience.
I had pages and books written down with as much information as I could, and then I just started putting all these dishes together and ideas, and so we came back very inspired.
Yeah. And so you had your first pop-up, then you started doing a few more.
Yep.
And then where does it go from there?
Yeah, so I think it was our third pop-up we did in Mukinbudin. So that's, for, you know, a lot of people who don't know, it's about 350 kilometres northeast of Perth, out in the wheat belt.
How did you choose that place?
Well, we've got some friends from there.
Right.
And they came to our second dinner and they said, come out to Mukinbudin, we'll do an event out there. And it was after a few beers at the end of the night, and we're like, yeah, sure. Just thinking, no, that's not going to happen, because at that point in time, we had an old Triton ute that had done 400,000 kilometres.
Right.
No trailers.
Yeah.
We borrowed plates, trestle tables, seating, lighting. We borrowed everything. Anyway, we did that event in Mukinbudin, 70 kilometres out of town. So this is the first place we did a dinner with no power, and it was out on a rock. And there's only 400 people in Mukinbudin, and we did 40 people at this dinner. We cut it off because we didn't have enough plates to do it anymore.
10% of the population.
10% of the population.
Yeah.
And it was the community that made it happen. Like, we borrowed trestle tables from the Mukinbudin Golf Club. A farmer brought out a trailer load of hay bales that we used for seating. People donated firewood, generators, all that kind of stuff. And I think that was a big turning point where we went, this is incredible. The community is so grateful. And we just went, this is what we're sticking with. We're going to do this. So from there, we just slowly started, you know, getting equipment just from the Lions shed down the road here. So all secondhand pots and plates and things like that, all mismatched. So it was a nightmare packing the ute. It's like Tetris, but it was just so much fun, and we were learning so much, and, you know, that's sort of where it really took off.
And now 5 years on, what sort of events are you doing and running now?
Very similar events.
Yeah.
We still do, you know, 30 to 40 people, and might do a gin and tonic with Old Youngs, as we were talking about before. 6 snacks and anywhere between 8 and 12 courses, and then some petit fours. And, you know, I think probably 50% of our events these days are either private events or, you know, for a company. So, you know, this weekend we're doing 100 people and only doing 4 courses.
Yeah.
But, yeah, majority of the events are still outdoors, under the stars, whether it's on the beach or a salt lake or in the treetops down at Valley of the Giants or something like that.
Yeah.
Or on an island, you know, we've taken people from Albany, put them in a helicopter and flown them over to Breaksea Island to do an event over there. So yeah, just quite similar to what we started doing, but you know, just trying to refine everything and push the boundaries a bit more.
What's the sort of impact that you want to have on your customers, and who typically, you know, aside from the private events, who typically comes?
It's such a wide range of people. So anyone from that, we've had, you know, kids who are 6 or 7 years old come with their parents and try all the food and enjoy it, all the way up to people in their, you know, 70s, 80s. So whether it's half the people are farmers out in Muckenbudin, local people, and the other half have actually come from Perth or Margaret River or driven so that they can experience a dinner out there and those ingredients. So it's very different all the time. We're always meeting really interesting people. It's not just foodies who come out, it's people from the communities that want to, you know, get involved and, you know, try something different, I guess. So, yeah, it's a very, very different community. But I guess what we're trying to pass on is we spend a lot of time with the traditional owners. So when I first did research, there wasn't much online, there wasn't many books, and the best way to learn was to spend time on country, do cultural tours, sit around the fire and listen to stories. So the stories that we've been given permission to share and the information that we've been given permission to share, we want to pass that on to the people who come to the dinners. And we might be sitting down right here and we can look, you know, across to the quandong tree that's only, you know, 50 metres away and talk about how incredibly healthy that quandong is. Or we might mention the Gubby Kakadu plum that's collected by Bruno and Marion up in the Dampier Peninsula, and that it has the highest vitamin C content of any tested fruit in the world, you know. And this is in our backyard.
Yeah.
Like, we have all these foods that blow superfoods out of the water. Like Australian foods are some of the healthiest in the world. So I guess we're trying to, you know, tell a story about what we do, let people know that we're, you know, supporting Aboriginal-run farms and communities, as well as the people in the bush food industry who've been there for a long time, who have the same mindset as us, and that, you know, we should be eating more of these foods at home. A lot of them are really sustainable, extremely healthy and really, really delicious. So we just want people to experience that firsthand, because there's just so many of those foods out there that we don't even know about.
And how did someone, I mean, I spoke to Dale in the previous podcast, how does somebody get out there and actually know this stuff? Because you've almost had to go on this odyssey to go and find these foods and learn about them. You know, that's obviously your focus and you've made it what you do. How does the everyday Joe find out?
I think the best way to go about it is to do a cultural tour in your region, or if you're going up north on holidays in the middle of the year, stop in Karratha and spend some time with Clinton Walker, or when you're in Broome, look up Neville Polina and go and spend some time out on his country and you'll catch the biggest sparrow of your life and listen to the stories and, eat some incredible food. But, if you look on the web and you look at the WAITOC website, which is basically promoting all the Aboriginal tourism and companies, you can just jump on there and have a look at what's closest to you or where you're going and book in a cultural tour, because that's where you're going to learn so much. And we keep going back and seeing our friends each time. So we've hung out with Clinton a whole heap of every year that we've gone up over the last, I think, 4 or 5 years. And every single time we see something new, we learn something new. So, there's just so much to learn. And I think, we should be learning more in schools as well. I feel that, and it's probably different for a lot of other schools. I feel like when I went to school, I wasn't taught a whole heap about, Aboriginal culture. I think times are changing and it's getting a lot better now. But, things like, I'm not sure if you've read Dark Emu by Bruce Pascoe.
No.
Absolutely incredible book. It's a really easy read, but things like that, that could be, a book that we all read in primary school or high school, just sort of teaching us more about Aboriginal culture, more about native Australian foods and how good they are for us and how they've been, preserved and cared for over thousands of years. I think it's more than just some of the foods. It's these life lessons that have been around for thousands and thousands of years that we can apply to, our everyday life.
What are some of the life lessons that you've sort of gleaned from this?
Well, first settlers have been here for a few hundred years, and we've managed to, clear a lot of land and do a lot of mining and really destroy a lot of the country. For thousands of years before that, it was maintained and looked after and pristine. And I think we really need to look back at that and go, well, if we continue going how we're going at the moment, we're going to be struggling. Like, we need clean water, we need food, and Aboriginal people have done it for tens of thousands of years, and I think there's a really good lesson just looking at how they manage the land. It's quite an in-depth conversation and quite a lot to learn, and we're still learning a lot about it, but I think there's a lot to be learned from them.
So as you go on these cultural tours and get exposed to the different food, is your brain continually ticking over, I could stick this in this and put that with this and put that together with that? Yeah,
I think that there's a lot of the time it's quite difficult to get large quantities of these ingredients.
Yeah.
That'll change over the coming years, but for us it works really well because we're on the road and travelling, especially with our North Tour where we do 15,000 kilometres in 3 months. We will go out and collect a bunch of ingredients, and we have to think about putting that into a dish the next day because we have more or less a menu written. But if we go out and the day before and get a bunch of bush coconuts and then mud crab and conch berries and boab and things like that, we want to incorporate that into the menu. So we're always thinking, what can we do? And that's the exciting thing about it. Like, we have to think on our feet and apply that to the menu straight away. So I guess in a traditional sense, in a restaurant, that dish might be on for 3 months and you might get to refine it over that time and do the little tweaks, whereas we put it on the menu once and then that next weekend it might not, it might be a total different dish. We might not have any boab left.
Yeah.
So although there's ups and downsides, like we don't get to refine that dish, but we get to move on to something else and try something different. So we're constantly
learning.
Yeah.
Rather than that sort of perfecting, maintaining stuff, which is constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. How do you go and pick your locations? Because Western Australia's a big old place.
It's huge. It's huge.
It's huge.
We spend a lot of time on the road. So I think with our North tour, we've got, quite a few destinations that we go to. So
when do you typically do your North tour? So do you split the year into a North tour and a Southern tour, or how does it generally look?
Well, the North tour goes for 3 months, and then the rest of the year we sort of are in certain regions over the summer periods, I guess you could say. And it might be a lot spent down in the southwest or Great Southern, and then a lot of time spent in the wheat belt. But the North tour sort of starts from mid-April and goes for about 3 months, and we do 15,000 kilometres all the way up into the Northern Territory.
You pick spots before you go?
Yeah, so it starts off normally with the Karijini experience. We'll go to Karratha, Broome, Fitzroy Crossing, Kununurra. Might go out to the Bungles, and then Kakadu, and then work our way back down. And then, some places like Karratha we've done maybe been there 5 times, so 5 different locations in Karratha, or 4 or 5. And same with Mukinbudin, we've done that 7 or 8 times, so that we're trying to find a different location each time. Which can be challenging because, the weather's not always on our side.
I was going to ask you about this in a minute.
Yeah. So, number one, the location has to be, doesn't have to be, but most of the time we like to have a beautiful location that, represents the ingredients in that area and showcases the beauty of Western Australia. But we also need to have a plan B and, be able to use the shearing shed down the road or the town hall in case there's, a flood clump coming or, some crazy weather, which happens more often than you'd think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess picking a location is about, having people in that area who might say, hey, these 3 spots are great and we'll go look at them. Or, each year when we're in Karratha, we might try and, find a different spot for the following year. Yeah.
And then there's got to be the logistical part of this as well, because you're taking everything. Is that right? Not just the tables and the chairs and the knives and the forks and the plates, but also something to cook on. How does that all come together? It's
definitely come a long way since we started.
It's more refined.
Yes. We don't have that old Triton ute anymore. We sort of went from the Triton ute and then got a trailer, and then the ute died, so we got a 4-wheel drive, and then that old trailer fell apart, so we got another trailer, and then the Hilux died, so we've upgraded to a truck now. And, it definitely makes life so much easier. And to do these pop-ups, you have to be extremely organised, because if you're 50 k's out of town and you forget the butter, or you leave the kangaroo back at the prep kitchen, you're not going back to get it.
No.
Like you're set up.
Yeah, it's off the menu.
Yeah. So you have to be really organised. And if you forget pots and pans, then, you're going to be struggling to cook. So having the truck means that everything has its place, and, it's designed to, have a big load on it. It's quite heavy. But yeah, you just have to be really organised. And because we're doing, at least one event each weekend, we're constantly looking, 6 months to a year in advance, because, as I mentioned before, it's all the logistics that are the hard work. That's the cooking is the fun bit, the easy bit. But yeah, just going out there and finding the site, making sure that we can get a toilet there if there's no toilets, or portaloo out there. Working out how we're going to get the guests there, talking to the Shire, filling out or designing a 20-page event management plan and risk management and fire management.
Because it's going to say health and safety as well.
Yep. Then, you know, and that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Then promoting the event, making sure we've got enough people coming to the event to cover our costs.
How do you promote, typically?
Basically just social media and word of mouth. We have the newsletter that goes out, but yeah, mainly social media. So yeah, like we're constantly trying to do new posters and have promotional material, and you know, when you only have a week in between dinners, you really need to think quite far ahead. So there's so much that goes into it before we even start prepping or thinking about the, you know, 10 courses, or it'll be up to 20 different, I guess, samples or bites of food, really.
What have been some of your more painful learning lessons?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and, you know, some places we might, like, for instance, this weekend we're able to do nearly 100 people. We're in the new Premier Mill in Katanning, so we have power, we have a kitchen. We can do 100 people.
Yeah, it almost sounds too easy now.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like we're cheating a little bit. But that's when we step up the game, and you know, we have a projector on the wall with you know, videos and photos, and incorporate matched wines, and have the winemakers there and some of the producers talking about the food. But you can't do that out in the bush. You can't serve 10 different wines. Like we can only fit a certain amount of wine glasses in, and if that road's really corrugated, you know, we might lose some bottles of wine, or things might smash. So we tailor each dinner and the menus to the location as well. If it's a really windy location, we need to be mindful that if we've got some crispy saltbush on top of the kangaroo, that might blow off. So this weekend, that's not going to be on there. We're going to change that.
Right.
Yeah.
So many things. I think, like I said before, what have been some of your more painful learning lessons along the journey?
So, yeah, the rain.
The rain.
The rain. We, you know, we've made a few calls at dinners to where the weather report has said, you know, 2% chance of rain, and we've, you know, evaluated it and talked to people, and everyone's like, no, it's not going to rain. And we've set up a dinner, and it started sprinkling halfway through, and you can't stop the dinner, pack up and go set it up in town hall. Like, it takes us hours and hours to set up. So these days we try and go the safe option. If it looks like there's, you know, a bit of rain coming, then we prefer to have people in the shearing shed where it's going to be, you know, safe, and people are going to be comfortable, and they're not going to be drenched. So just having, a plan B, and also even a plan C some of the times. We just have backup upon backup, whether it be the location or the food, or if somebody turns up who forgot to mention that they might be a vegetarian or something like that, we have to be ready to change 10 courses.
Yeah.
So yeah, just being really prepared.
Yeah. Has there been one dinner in particular where you've been like, wow, how did we pull that off?
We did an event in the Pinnacles, in Pinnacle Desert, and that was incredible. Like, it was a really special dinner. It was a small group of people, and I remember early on, a beautiful afternoon, and we were having snacks. We had a raw emu dish. We saw this emu like pretty much run through, like really close to all the guests. It was just fantastic, but it got really cold that night. So we had these gas heaters, but it was maybe 3 or 4 degrees. So keeping food warm, like when the main course, the kangaroo, came out, comes out of the pan hot, and you're slicing, and it goes cold so quickly. So we just really had to be on top of things. But for that event, we had the car probably 200 or 300 metres away from where we were doing the event, because we were right in between the pinnacles. So we had to unload everything and take it over in between the pinnacles to set it up. And the deal was, and this is like most of our dinners when we leave, that there was nothing left. So at the end of the dinner, we had to sweep the sand so that there was no footprints or anything left. And walking back and forth from the car to clear the plates and then take the dishes over to the car, it just adds minutes upon minutes on each course, over 10 courses.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, at that point in time, I thought, well, you know, every single minute adds up over the length of a dinner. And, you know, if we need to walk an extra 2 minutes to the car back and forth 10 times, that, you know, that really stretches the night out. So that was a huge event, and it was fantastic. And we swept that sand, and we went back the next day, and it was like no one had been there, like majority of our events. But yeah, it just really makes you think about, when you get to a location, how you set up the table, how you set up the pass, how you set up the kitchen, the dishwashing section, and how it all flows and how it works.
Sounds phenomenal. You know, it's one thing to go to a kitchen and see everybody working in harmony and this, that, and the other, when you see some of those kitchens where you can peer in a restaurant, but to actually create that in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's quite different. And, you know, having a kitchen there, if a vegetarian turns up and says, oh, I can't eat the menu, you're like, great, that's fine. Like, we've got a whole fridge full of food here. We'll sort that out for you. But in the bush, it's definitely a lot different. You know, you've got a couple of Wacos or Engels, and it's packed to the brim with the prep for 10 courses. You don't have all this extra room and space. So there's definitely there's up and down sides of cooking out in nature, that's for sure.
You seem quite a calm character. You're always this calm when you're in the thick of it?
I'd like to think so, because but no, not all the time. We do, like I said, we're very prepared, and we do a lot of the work beforehand, and there's a lot of behind the scenes thinking. So you know, I might constantly be thinking about how we're setting up the truck when we get to a location, and if we're going to put it on this certain angle, it's going to give us a better wind block, and the dinner will flow better like this.
Yeah.
Just little things like that, and how we get the guests from point A to B, and making sure that, you know, if we've taken the team, do we have enough, you know, swags, because we might be camping out after the dinner, and where we're going to camp, and, you know, just all that kind of thing. That's all done beforehand. So as we're getting to the location, maybe the day before, that if we've got the chance to spend a day out on country and go foraging with traditional owners, that's where we're, you know, just sort of connecting and being really relaxed. And then as it gets to the day of the dinner, it's just about setting up. And it's not always that easy. Sometimes we, you know, there's always hurdles.
Yeah.
But that's
do you get stressed?
Yeah, definitely.
You don't strike me as a stressed character at the moment.
When, you know, there's always hurdles. I mean, if you know, blow a tyre or something like that, so you end up getting to a place an hour or 2 hours late. So you have to leave a bit of a window there, so that for anything that could happen. There's definitely stressful times.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
And do the guests come to your event and still carry that sort of, how can I put it, that same expectation that they would have in a restaurant when they come to your event, or do they just calm down a bit more and are a little bit more understanding if, say, one dish is 5 minutes later than you'd anticipate?
I think they're a bit more understanding.
Yeah.
We get a bit more leeway because we're plating 40 dishes all at once, rather than in a restaurant plating 4 dishes with heat lamps, a light, no wind, in a restaurant. You can actually see the dish because we've got lights out there in the bush, but
Yeah.
it's a lot harder to see.
gonna say.
We might be walking on uneven ground or rocks. We're using trestle tables, not a pass. We don't have the heat lamps, so we design those dishes to the location we're at, and we keep it simple. Number one, because we're not in a kitchen, but number two, also just to highlight those ingredients. But I think people were, they understand where we are and that we're cooking outside and that we're cooking on a camping four burner, majority of the time, 90% of the time, we don't have an oven with us, so it's just all in pans, or if we're lucky enough to have the campfire, we'll cook over that. So the food is very different to, I guess, something that you'd be getting in a fine dining restaurant. If we had a fine dining restaurant and we were doing 40 people,
expectations would be up here and
Yeah.
mechanical distribution.
Yeah. So very different type of cooking compared to, 6 or 7, 8 years ago when I was in fine dining restaurants.
Where do you want to take further over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, we want to continue to do the pop-ups. We'll probably, instead of doing 60 a year, we might do 8 or 10. There's a possibility of a permanent location in the years to come, or next year possibly. But
would that be like a permanent field or an actual or an actual building?
It might be an actual building. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I think we'll always continue with further. But I guess.
Does it have a shelf life for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, physically it is really tough because unloading and then repacking the truck at the end of the night it's hard work. Like, there's heavy boxes, there's tables, there's chairs, it's a lot of strain on your body, a lot of bending, and we're constantly fixing things because you do that in kitchens, things break, but every time we go on North Tour, it's like, okay, we're taking a truck, we're taking a four-wheel drive, new tyres, new batteries, full service, fix all the broken tables, fix, the shelves, all that kind of thing. So when you look at it and ask the question, is it viable? It's not. The only reason we can do this is from the support of our family and friends.
Right.
If we had to hire a commercial kitchen, if we had to pay full-time staff, we couldn't do it. Not even close. So we're really lucky to, have this kitchen here and, pay minimal rent on it, which is great. And then with our staff and our team, we've got an incredible team. And we have people in different regions around Western Australia who will come and get involved and help out and, donate time and just, that's what Fervor's sort of based on.
Sounds like more of a movement than a business.
It is, yeah, certainly. So, it's our passion, and I'd like to think we'll be doing it for a long time, but you have to look at that side of things if it's viable or not. So there are different projects that we are working on next year. We've finished a book, so that'll be released in a month or two. And then there's potential for a permanent place next year and possibly some documentaries or TV sort of thing. So next year we'll be focusing on a few other projects as well.
What have you learnt about yourself through this journey?
I don't know what it'd be like to work for me or with me, because I'm pretty. A lot of the time, I think I'm right about everything,
Right.
and that I have a better idea about how something should be set up, and I know that's not the case.
Is a typical... this is an interesting question. So is a typical event... Are you the focus point of it?
Well, I'd like to think the whole team is. So,
But a team has to have a focal point or somebody in charge or something.
Yeah.
So that'll be you then.
yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I'll be calling the shots a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the team is incredible, and it might
Yeah.
just be, the crew that we use when we're down in Albany. They jump on all the dishes, and menus different this time, but they just jump in. They know how to get it done, and you just show them one thing, and it flows through.
Yeah.
It's the same with the front of house. Steph has to adapt to a new restaurant every weekend, and we're out in the bush, but the front door might be coming from a different direction, and all that kind of thing. So everybody's very, very good at managing how we set up differently each weekend.
Yeah. But back to you.
Back to me, yeah.
Yeah. You don't get off the hook. So you often think you're always right. What have
Yeah.
you learnt about yourself on this journey?
I guess I need to be more patient and understanding, because everything changes all the time. I have everything going through my head every single week, so I have the whole event planned out. And sometimes I think that maybe everybody else should know that as well and what's happening.
Just
so I need
tap
to be
into your head.
I'm like, come on, like, how do you not know this? It's like, well, we've never done it like this before. It's all in my head. So yeah, I think I need to be a bit more patient with people. I'm very set in my ways of, if you take something, put it back exactly where you found it. Which
Right.
normally happens in most kitchens, but with what we do, it's extremely difficult. You have, different people coming to help all the time. The layout of the truck changes as we evolve and as we refine things. So, 4 months ago, that spatula was probably in a different drawer or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Is it still taking those, what we were talking about earlier, that sort of excellence of execution that you've been exposed to,
Yeah.
and then bringing it into what you're doing?
Yeah.
Because you know what excellent looks like.
Yeah, so I can be pretty critical of certain things like that. So, I don't know. I think that I'd like to think that I'm okay to work with, but I can also see that it might be a bit of a pain sometimes. Yeah. So patience, I think. Yeah.
What have been some of the unexpected benefits that Ferva's brought into your life?
The travel, the people that we've met, and just what we've been able to learn, you know. Just sitting around a campfire and listening to stories, or, listening to song, things that we never would have experienced without Ferva. So, and those are the things that, that we really look forward to each time, and probably one of the main reasons we continue to do what we do is to keep learning, to keep connecting with our friends, meeting new people and learning about their country or their stories. So we're extremely lucky, I think.
Where's been, it's probably one of the most difficult questions I could ask you, but where's been one of the best dishes that's been served to you?
Oh, just in general,
In your time, yeah.
in my time.
Where you've gone, wow, that was next level.
We were in New York at the end of last year, and we had this dessert at Cosme, and it was a corn husk kind of dessert, like a meringue and a curd and stuff. Super simple, but just absolutely delicious. And, we were there with 5 or 6 friends, and we've just been eating tacos and stuff like that, and then the dessert came out and it blew me away. We don't get out much these days. But that would probably go back So that restaurant, they're the sister restaurant of Pujol in Mexico City. So I started there for a while in 2012, and when I finished, I sat down. They gave me a dinner with match drinks and stuff. So as an overall experience, that dinner was definitely one that I'll never forget. It's the best meal I've ever had in a restaurant. And it was 14 courses matched with drinks, and not just your wine, but there was beers, tequilas, hot chocolates, huaraches, things like that.
Right.
And I love Mexican food. It's probably my favourite food. But just having 14 courses based on traditional Mexican food done at a very high level was mind-blowing. I guess the other thing that I always look back to is the camp oven. So we've got a great friend in Albany, Cole Sippy, and he gets all the family and friends around and cooks for, anywhere between 8 and 40 people, all out of camp oven. So he might have 15 going, 20 going at once. So dampers in a few of them. He'll have veg going in the others. He'll have lamb going in some, ossobuco, all that kind of stuff. And that's what I enjoy. Like, it's just outside in Albany on this beautiful granite rock where he does all his cooking, and you just sit down, eat this beautiful, some of the best damper I've ever had, and eat this delicious lamb from his farm. Like, just you can look over and they've got all the produce there, and it's all cooked in camp ovens, and that's some of the best food I've had, I think.
If you could have your pick of a dinner out in any restaurant around the world, where would you go?
At this point in time, probably Central in Lima, Peru. Looks like they're doing some really, really interesting stuff. Plus, I love South America.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And if you could do a further event anywhere you wanted, where would you? Is there a location where you think, I'd really love to do one there? I don't know how it's going to come together, but I'd love to do one there.
I haven't thought too much about that. I mean, we've always wanted to do one at Uluru. I'd love to do that. I think that'd be incredible. I really think that we need to go out and spend quite a bit of time first, and spend time on country and learn about the area and meet people, and then, possibly the following year come back. And also Arnhem Land, which, we're hoping to get up there, but I think up in that region for sure. So, yeah, Uluru, Arnhem Land, definitely.
What are you grateful for?
I've got a lot to be grateful for. Grateful that I'm healthy. I'm grateful for my family and friends, because they're a big part of my life, and they're basically what make Further tick. Although since we started Further, that you get to spend less and less time with your family and friends, but they're always the ones you can pick up the phone and say, hey, let's go get a beer, and you haven't hung out with them for a couple of years. It's like, it's just exactly the same. It's like a few days ago. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm also, really grateful for all the people that have been involved in Further, like just being able to go out on country and listen to stories and, learn about Aboriginal culture, about Australian history, because that's a big part of why we're still doing this.
If you could go back and give Paul a piece of advice as he was about to start that job, which could mean he could go surfing and do a bit of work in the kitchen right at the start, and give him one piece of advice from where you are now, what would that be?
Don't be a chef. No, I'm totally joking. because cooking has actually, led me to be here, and I'm so grateful for that. I probably would have said, start cooking earlier, or at a younger age, sort of look into cooking, and because it's more than just cooking in the kitchen, it's learning about where your vegetables come from and how it grows, and being sustainable and looking after country. So
it's the whole connectedness of it.
Yeah, because it's changed the way I think about everything.
How do you see it all now?
Well, those days before I started cooking, or even the first few years when I started cooking, I'd been running down the beach for years and years and years, and I'm walking past all this food, and yeah, it's just opened my eyes up to what's around us, and how, before everybody was living in these beautiful big houses and able to go to the supermarket and get whatever food we want, whenever we want, thinking back hundreds of years ago of how it all worked, and, how it all, seasonality and looking after country, and people used to work really hard for their food as well, Not that we don't these days, but it was just a different time.
Yeah, worked harder in a different way.
Definitely, yeah. So, yeah, I think cooking has definitely changed the way we think about a lot of things. Yeah.
And if there was one last nugget of wisdom from you that you'd like to give the listeners, Paul's little nugget of wisdom over what he's learned, what would that be?
I guess take your time, do your research, and listen to the stories. Go out and do cultural tours if you want to learn about Aboriginal culture and Australian native ingredients. That's where you're going to really learn. There's more and more books coming out, but spending time with the traditional owners is where you'll learn. And it's also about the feeling on the inside as well, and connecting. I think that's pretty important. Yeah.
Superb. If somebody wants to come to one of your events, where do they find you?
They can look on the website. So Ferva, or www.ferva.com.au, and we'll just put all our upcoming dinners on the website.
Superb.
And they can join us wherever they like.
Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you very much.
It's been fascinating to hear how you've brought all these different components together, and just to understand the complexity of what you actually do. As if running a restaurant isn't difficult enough, you just move the restaurant around everywhere and put it outside. So I have absolute admiration for what you put together, and it's been fascinating to hear the journey behind it. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's been great.
There you go.